Hi everyone, my name is Laurie and welcome to another edition of DR Boxing Weekly, the show that covers all the relevant stories in boxing. Before we get underway, let me introduce my two guests. First to my right, we've got James Toon in the house. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks very much for having me, man.
No problem at all. And to my left, we've got Nick Francis, aka the voice of reason.
Woo! Why does he get a nice catchphrase? Or a nice name, label?
And if you're a regular contributor to this show or a regular watcher of the show, you may have noticed that we're one person short this week. Shane Willoughby's, where is he? He's out of the country at the moment, isn't he?
I think so, yeah.
He's in Amsterdam.
He's on vacation, yeah, smoking a big spliff and watching this show.
Well, I don't condone such actions, but, you know.
I do where it's legal. Where it's legal, I condone it.
In that coffee shop, man, drinking
Maybe
on an
a couple of cigars, yeah, maybe once a bit of
smoking. Mind you, I don't think Shane smokes. But anyway, let's get straight into business.
Tell you who does smoke, Francis Ngannou. He smokes fools, and the one he's going to be smoking this week is Tyson Fury.
Okay.
Not this week, but...
Right, so as we know by now, the WBC heavyweight champion of the world, Tyson Fury, will fight the former UFC heavyweight champion, Francis Ngannou, in a crossover bout. That's taking place in Saudi Arabia on Saturday, the 28th of October. Fury's WBC boxing belt will not be on the line. Now, the announcement has drawn a lot of criticism. A lot of people have had a lot to say. But since then, I know you guys did a show last week where you covered some of it. But there's been a further development. We're now hearing that there's been a two-way rematch clause inserted, which two-way means that whoever loses, because I thought it was an exhibition, I didn't even think it was a real fight, but whoever gets the short end of the stick, if there's reasonable grounds, I would have thought, to justify it, they're going to have a rematch. Now, to me, that is just further indictment of what this is, which is just a cynical money grab by Fury and his team. But anyway, before I say more, let's start with James, because I know that you're in favour of this, aren't you?
Damn right, it's an excellent fight. Two of the baddest men on the planet. Who is going to be the baddest man on the planet? Like I said, and I can't hate against my guy Francis Ngannou. He wanted this fight. He did everything to make this fight. And if you're talking about a man who's stood by his morals and principles, that is that man. He fought the UFC tooth and nail to get out of that contract. The UFC has their fighters by a stranglehold, and they keep trying to extend it and force them into a place where they can't compete with other organizations. They can't do their own things. And he stood his ground. He said, I don't care how much money you're paying me. If you don't improve healthcare, if you don't improve any of these other things for these other fighters, I'm not going to sign with you. So he left. And he went and chased what he wanted to chase, which was his dream of fighting Tyson Fury, fighting the heavyweight champion of the world. His first dream as a fighter was to be a heavyweight boxing champion of the world before he became
stop
UFC.
right there. I don't think the criticism that's been aimed at this so-called fight is aimed towards Francis Ngannou. Certainly most of the people I've spoken to and some of the stuff I've seen online, and I would include myself in this, we've got absolutely no problem with Francis Ngannou being compensated for his skills, which he said he hadn't been properly in the UFC. That's another story. But so him getting a career high payday, I don't think too many people have got a problem with that. The problem everyone has is that Tyson Fury, let's face it, having ducked Alexander Usyk shamelessly and not defended the belt in over a year, is now going to take on Francis Ngannou in this so-called crossover fight. According to Frank Warren, a game-changing fight, even though Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor had fought in 2017.
Which was a game-changing fight.
No, it's not
that was a game-changing fight. McGregor versus Mayweather was one of the biggest.
But I don't want to get onto Mayweather. Let's bring in.
But the thing I would dispute quickly
I don't
is when you say it's a shameless cash grab.
I don't want to talk about Conor McGregor.
I'm not talking about McGregor.
Let's bring in Nick Francis, the voice of reason.
I'm not talking about that.
You had to wake me up from my nap, blood, because listening to man talk about this fight is so boring. Like this,
what fight?
It's barely a fight. Like exactly. It's not. It's going to be competitive on the day. It's going to be entertaining on the day. Tyson Fury's not defended the belt in a year, and then it's going to be in further 6 months at least. It's going to be 3 months until the fight, and then who knows what's going to happen with potential injuries and different things like that. He should be forced to vacate the belt.
Yeah,
he should be forced to vacate the belt.
This is the problem.
So if they're not even fighting for at this point with a rematch clause, I'd rather he got a shot. Francis Ngannou actually got a shot at the title. If it's either going to be professional boxing, or it's going to be exhibition.
But the problem with that is Francis Ngannou has not fought a single round of boxing in his life. Can I just make the point? He's never even taken place and fought in an amateur fight.
No.
So how does he end up fighting Tyson Fury?
Because, like you said, it's a money grab. And James,
not
only is it a cynical money grab, but James said that he likes Francis Ngannou because of his morals, and he stuck to his guns, and he stuck to his word. And I agree with that.
I like the Pope because of his morals. That's
controversial. But it's funny that you're saying that you'd support Francis Ngannou because of his morals, when on the other side of the ring you've got a man who's got no morals and constantly says things about how he's a fighting man and all he cares about is titles and all the rest of it, and he's not even got to defend the title. Yes, it's about money. Money is part of the sport, but it's not the entirety of the sport.
And I would add on that as well, Nick. You are absolutely right. I would add on that. Imagine if that trickles down to the rest of the divisions.
Yeah.
What kind of state will boxing will be in when you'll have champions just say, right, you know what, I'm going to segue into doing exhibitions rather than defending my title.
Which is fine. Done that the whole time. How many times have we seen in boxing throughout the years fights not being made at right times, fights being pushed,
that's totally different to leaving the sport entirely.
He's not leaving the sport. He's fighting a boxing bout against a guy it's not going to be on his record. To say he has no morals at all, I think is slightly harsh.
He goes against his morals. I didn't say he's got no morals.
I see what you're saying. He's said a lot of things that he hasn't lived up to. His words have been very wishy-washy. But I think this fight has just been a matter of making it happen. I think it's happened at the wrong time. I don't have a problem with him making this fight. I think it is a massive spectacle. However, I think it's happening at a time where both fighters are at a lot lower of a stock than which they were 2 years ago. A couple of years ago, a year and a half when they did it, was when Francis Ngannou was coming straight off beating Stipe, and he was the world champion before John Jones came back, when Tyson Fury was at his peak after beating Wilder, or after beating Dillian White, and people still hadn't turned on him as much. That's when you make the fight, when it's red hot like that.
So given the fact that you mentioned timing then, right? So how do you feel about the rematch clause being introduced into this already, what I would call farcical nonsense? Because if there is a rematch, that means it's going to further slow up the division.
I don't like the rematch clause, personally.
You don't like the rematch
I think the only reason the rematch clause should be in there is, as you said, if it was a championship bout. And I don't understand why it's not a championship fight. I presume...
No, but how can it be a championship fight? How can it be a championship fight for the WBC heavyweight title of the world, which, let's face it, is one of the biggest accolades, not just in boxing, but in the whole of sports? Yeah. When Francis Ngannou's never fought a round of boxing in his life, not even an amateur.
Because he has enough brand appeal and he has a big enough name to be able to do it. And before you jump in and go crazy at me, he is still fighting the lineal heavyweight champion of the world. So irregardless of whether you think he is, my question. Okay, but I'm telling you, if he beats Tyson Fury, he deserves the belt anyway. You've beaten the champion. I don't think he will. But if he doesn't and he loses the title match, why does it matter that he's been given a shot?
We're talking about
I'll tell you why it matters.
We're talking about a man that's never boxed, let alone professional. He's not even done amateur. I would go as far as to say you could pick any top-class amateur in this country and they would school Francis Ngannou.
Perhaps, but Laurie, let me tell you, we live in a capitalist economy. We don't live in a meritocracy. You can't...
What's that got to do with the heavyweight championship
It's got everything to do with it. Boxing isn't purely on what you would like it to be and what a lot of people would like it to be, purely on your skills and what you've achieved in the sport.
No, but we're not talking about skills.
If you have name and you have brand appeal, these things can overwhelm it because money makes the world go round.
Andrew Tate's got a lot of brand appeal. Should he have got a title shot then?
If someone wants to, are you telling me if someone like Vidal Riley, a very accomplished boxer coming up, was offered the fight against Andrew Tate, he wouldn't take it? Of course he would.
That's exactly what I was saying earlier. This is the danger. This is the dangerous precedent that this is setting, because you just said there, if Andrew Tate was to come on the scene, or whoever who's got big brand appeal, as it were, and challenge one of the champions in boxing, he can leave behind his obligations to the rest of boxing and the rest of the division and say, you know what, I'm going to go and fight Andrew Tate because that will make me a lot of money. But
Laurie, 1 second.
Where will the sport be in a few years' time?
All of that is fine. All of that is fine. Oh, no, all of that is fine, but there is a lane for that, and that is influencer boxing. When we had this conversation before, James said it was disrespectful to say that Tyson Fury should go into influencer boxing and all the rest of it. But That's exactly what he's doing. You're talking about Bill O'Reilly fighting Andrew Tate. He's not even somebody with a professional boxing record of any type of note.
Do you not see the dangers of this? I mean, it's not okay. You reference Francis Ngannou getting a payday, great for him. But if you look at the long-term damage this potentially does to boxing, it really is a serious thing, bro. Trust me.
But it's not the president. You said it yourself. Mayweather was the first. He did it with McGregor already.
Mayweather didn't have a belt.
He didn't hold any belts. He relinquished
He didn't have a belt. He was not slowing up any divisions. Mayweather took that fight. He was 49-0, right? He's come to the end of his career. He had been retired. He came out of retirement for that fight so he could get the 50-0. It's just a... It was just
and even still, most boxing fans still consider Mayweather 49-0. They don't consider that Conor McGregor fight. That no one really considers that a boxing match.
That's just snobbery.
That's not snobbery. No, Conor McGregor's not a professional boxer.
I don't want to. I'm not going to allow you to just veer off into Conor McGregor. Let's concentrate on what we're talking about. Answer this question. Frank Warren, when he was pressed on the issue as to why Tyson Fury's fighting Ngannou, why they couldn't have selected an opponent in the WBC rankings. You know, Fury holds the title. You know, there's a top 10, top 15. He could have made a voluntary defense against anyone in that top 15. And Frank Warren's response was, there was no one to fight. Of course there are people to fight. I could name at least half a dozen people. Martin McCauley.
No.
Frank Sanchez.
No.
F.A. Jack. Listen, there's loads of
not
guys
bigger fights than
hold on.
No one said bigger.
And it's not about big, bro.
Listen
he's
to the question.
WBC champion of the world. It's not about I'm only going to fight fights that are going to make me X amount of money. You have an obligation to defend your belt. Now, as Nick was saying, if you don't want to do that and it's all about making money for you, fine. Retire from boxing. Give up the belt so that other people who do want to box can fight for the belts.
You don't even have to retire from boxing. You could just give up the belt. Then you could jump in and out of boxing so often as you want. You could fight anybody, anywhere, because you're at that commercial perspective. You could fight AJ and then fight Ngannou and then fight Usyk and then fight John Jones and then fight KSI. Fight whoever you want. But you have to move away from the belt.
He could take a sabbatical and say, you know what? I'm going to pursue money-making opportunities, right? And, you know, there would be people who might criticize that, but at least if you're giving up the belts, you can say, listen, man, I'm done. I'm going to do my own thing. I might come back to boxing at a late date. Not too many people would have anything to say.
And before you answer...
The problem is what he's done is, and don't forget, it's coming off the back of the shameless ducking of Alexander Usyk, which I'm sure you would agree, he did duck it.
That's what I was going to say. You have to remember as well, Alexander Usyk is 2 years older than Tyson Fury. So I think Tyson Fury is like 34. Usyk's like 36. So if he's going to take another year to doing this, or another 6 months, do you mean Usyk's going to be getting closer and closer to 40? And in my opinion, Tyson Fury has form of waiting for people to be at their weakest, outside of maybe Klitschko and Wilder, but waiting for people to be at their weakest and then try to prey on them then. And I think that's what he's doing as well.
And the other thing as well is with this thing about there's no one out there to fight. Well, I thought Tyson Fury was this big star. And he sells out stadiums and all the rest of it.
So he could fight anyone.
Yeah, so if he can do that, then surely him fighting Frank Sanchez shouldn't be a problem, because just off the back of him alone, be able to, according to him,
AJ can fight Franklin.
When there's a big fight and Ngannou staring him down, like I said, I do tend
give
to
up
agree
the
with you.
belts.
I do tend to agree with you to a certain extent. The way that he's dealt with this whole Usyk situation has been horrible, if you ask me. I think there's no excuse as to why that fight shouldn't have been made. There's no excuse as to why the Anthony Joshua fight before, when he made the Chisora fight, shouldn't have been made. I don't agree or condone with all his actions. I wanted to see these fights made. However, in the situation that we're in, with Anthony Joshua signed already to fight Dillian White, with flipping Usyk already signed to defend against Dubois, he had no other big fights to make. These other fights you're naming are nowhere near on the level of Francis Ngannou. So obviously you're going to make the Ngannou fight. And
no, you're not obviously going to make the Ngannou fight.
I think this all goes back to the same Canelo debate that we've had time and time again. You're saying he should step away, relinquish his belts, and do what he needs to do with this money fight.
If you're not gonna, hang on.
No. You've raised like 10 minutes worth of points. I'm answering the point.
I want to make this crystal clear. I am not saying that per se he shouldn't take part in exhibition fights.
I know you're
what I am saying is he has obligations to fulfill. If you're not going to fulfill those, right? Fulfill those, then What you should do is give up the belts and let somebody else contest the championship.
Yeah, but
what you're doing is
answering to that
you
point.
are slowing up the division. Now, surely you can see that.
No, but you've said this already, and that's what I am disputing, because it's the exact same thing that you've said with Canelo, and we've gone back and forth with it over
This is actually
and
worse
over
than
again.
Canelo. This is worse than Canelo.
It's not on him to do it. You're saying that he should relinquish it and he should go and fight these fights and make it crystal clear what he's doing. But that does two things. First of all, it makes whatever those fights that he's making with these other people for money worth half the value with half the viewers, because he no longer has the belt. He's no longer the heavyweight champion of the world. He no longer has that going into the marketing of it. And he's basically admitting, I'm done at the top level and I'm going to go and do this. Very, very bad marketing decision. Very bad on that front. So he's not going to do that and hurt his money. Second of all,
that fighting someone who isn't a boxer,
it's not on him. No. If
done.
he admits, if he says, I'm dropping my belt, I'm doing this, it's so bad for everything to do with it. It's horrible. And it's not on him to do it.
Does he not have the confidence
Go at the WBC.
Does he not
Tell them to sanction
Does he not have the confidence that he can walk back in and win it back?
It's not about that. It's about the money he'd make for those fights. Tell the WBC, you strip him of the belt. They're the ones holding the division up, not Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is a man doing what's best for him. You go at the WBC and you say, you strip him. If he's not going to fight people that you've ranked to put him in against, and you think that he's ducking oppositions or he's ducking unifications, you strip him of the belts. Force him to do it.
I'm gonna give you that.
yourself.
I'm gonna give you that. You do make a valid point. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know how you feel about this, Nick. I'm going to bring you in a minute. I think you're right. I think the WBC should take that decision out of his hands and strip him, but they won't. And this is where boxing just shoots itself in the foot, because what is going? Let's be honest, man. It's just a cynical money grab. It puts the sport in a bad light, and like I said, it's coming off the back of Fury blatantly ducking Usyk.
I think that's what makes it really bad.
It's just a bad look on so many levels, Nick.
Yeah, I agree. The WBC should obviously be stripping him. The ducking of other fighters, yeah, I know. The ducking of other fighters is egregious. You know, no one else is doing this at the height of their career, at the peak of their career. Either you're at the peak and you're going to go and take these big fights, or you retire and relinquish the belts. You can't have it both ways. He's trying to have his cake and eat it. Like Laurie said, it's worse than the Canelo situation. Usyk's going to be close to 40 by the time they fight, if they ever do fight. You know, and then he'll trot around and say that he's the best ever and all the rest of it. And it's a really poor, sad state of affairs. And when all is said and done, Tyson Fury may well have a better resume than someone like Anthony Joshua. But Anthony Joshua may end up being more respected than Tyson Fury because of the way he's conducting himself right now.
Yep, I think that's pretty much...
I do want to say, although I've backed Ngannou and I've backed the fight, and I can give you 1,001 reasons as to the sides I do back it, I do think that it's come at a horrible time, and the thing that makes it really bad and will leave a really bitter taste in people's mouths is the way that he's conducted himself over the past 12 months when it comes to fights. Most namely with Alexander Usyk. No, I can see both sides of it. I'm not going to completely criticize him and 100% throw him under the bus for it. I'm not going to throw the whole entire fight under the bus, because I'm still excited to watch it. And I think a lot of people who criticize it will still tune in just out of morbid curiosity to see what happens in it. So they're still interested in some form or another. However, the way that he's conducted himself in these negotiations, the fact that he said things and then done the complete opposite to them, and he's kind of mugged off a lot of people with the things that he said and the way that he's handled the Usyk negotiations. I don't agree with that, and I agree with everything you're saying on that point, that I wouldn't necessarily say that he's ducking, but he's certainly not making it easy for these fights to happen, and he's certainly causing some problems with it. So...
Okay, I'll take it home from here. Listen, I've heard what you've had to say, and I did agree with you about the WBC, so I'm not totally in disagreement with you. But I do think this fight, so-called fight anyway, is bad on so many levels. Number one, as you said, the timing. Well, let's rewind. The ducking of Usyk so he could take part in this charade, as far as I'm concerned, is disgraceful. The fact that you're slowing up the division and denying other people opportunities. When I say denying other people opportunities, I'm not just talking about Usyk. I'm talking about guys in the top 10, legitimate guys who are very good fighters, waiting their chance, the likes of Frank Sanchez, Makhmudov. You know what I mean? There's quite a few guys I can name. Martin McCauley, Michael Hunter. There's loads of guys he could have fought. So this Frank Warren riposte about none of these guys bring any money to the table. Well, boo-hoo. If that's how you feel, then have Tyson Fury retire from boxing, or at least take a hiatus, and say, I'm going to go out and grab as much money as possible. You lot, I would have far more respect if he said that. You lot contest the belts. I'm going to go and make some money. If I feel like coming back to boxing later on, a year or two, and you lot still around, still got the belts, I might take them off. I'd have more respect for him if he said that.
Can I just quickly add one point?
And the one final thing I would say on this before I am going to bring you in is that if, as I said earlier, to me, it sets a very bad precedent because he's done this now and he's got away with it, let's be honest. What's to stop a load of the other champions if we go down the weights and say, you know what, I'm not going to take on my #1 mandatory contender. Andrew Tate's calling me out. I think I'll fight him because of how much money that's going to bring to the table. It would just make a complete mockery of the sport.
I don't contest those issues. What I would personally say, because you said you'd have a lot more respect for him, it did get me thinking. We can all look at this from our own perspectives and our own gazes of life. If I'm looking at this from Tyson Fury's perspective, if you actually look at the history of the man and how he came up through his career, because of where he came from, he was racially stereotyped for being a gypsy. He was cast out by the media. He wasn't given a lot of respect by any fans or any people coming up. He had a very tough upbringing throughout the hill. I'm not saying it does, but for him personally, he probably has felt very disrespected by a lot of people within the boxing world. No, he has. No, after. I'm talking post-Wilder. He did. Yeah. Post-Wilder is a different story. I'm talking pre-Wilder when he first went off the rails and everything. Through that entire portion of his career, building up to the Klitschko fight, he was mocked by everyone. He was cast away by the media, and he was disrespected a lot. And in his head, he might think, if at my lowest, when I didn't have all this clout or whatever, everyone was disrespecting me, why should I have it on myself to hold these people or help these people out by respecting them? And that could be one of his thinking.
The reason I would disagree with that entirely is because if we list all of the world champions in boxing, of all of the different federations, of all of the different weight classes, the same argument could be made for 50% of those people, at least. Lots of people will have the same argument. When they're at the bottom, no one cares.
He had a lot of problems because he was a gypsy. He did have
and lots of people have problems if they're Mexican, and lots of people have problems if they're black, and lots of people have problems.
I'm not saying they
don't.
I'm just saying from his perspective. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying from his perspective.
I'm just saying you put that argument forward as a rebuttal to Laurie, and I'm saying I'm rejecting that rebuttal because lots of other people can make the same argument. All the other champions can make the same argument.
Yeah, come on. That is a very weak one. I gave you the WBC stripping him. I gave you that. But I'm not going to give you this one. That is weak, bro. But anyway, we're going to finish now. We could argue about this all night, as you've seen.
And we will.
James, he can see a pathway where this fight makes sense. To me, the only way it makes sense for me is if Fury gives up the belts, which he's not going to because the fight's been signed now. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a charade, it's nonsense, it's a cynical money grab, and I think it sets a very bad precedent for boxing. I think Nick agrees with me. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments section. Do you agree with James? It's not Fury's fault.
Probably not.
Maximising his earnings. It's good for Ngannou. People are going to watch it. Rare. Or do you agree with myself and Nick who think otherwise?
And I'm curious to know, no allegations here being made, spoken to my lawyers already, but is anybody concerned about the legitimacy of the fight that we're going to see happen? Because if they're in a position where they can just print crazy amounts of money so long as they do this, I'm concerned, and it's not even in a sport that Ngannou has any particular affection for. And if I take James's point, it's not a sport that Tyson Fury might have any. If he has that type of opinion, if Tyson Fury has that type of thought and opinion about the governing bodies and the fans, all the rest of it, then I'm concerned about the legitimacy of the contest in the first place.
To me, it's all about money, as they say, money. It's not always, but it can be the root of all evil. So I'll leave you with that point. But listen, hope you enjoyed the show. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification for more content from this channel. Keep it locked and loaded on DR Boxing and indeed DR Sports. And we'll see you soon. Thank you very much. We're out.